All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Industry 101 Masterclass. Thank you for coming. I'd like to do like a little roll call. So if we can go around and each person introduce themselves. We'll start with this gentleman here, Mr. Robbie Robinson.
Yes, sir. How you doing, Rob?
How you doing? Good to have you. Thanks for coming. And who's next?
Anytime.
What's up? My name is Shaquille Watkin.
And who's up next?
It's a pleasure.
This gentleman right here. What's your
I think
name?
they didn't hear you. Oh, can you hear us?
Oh, okay. Yeah, he can hear us. He's got his mic muted.
Oh, no, I'm not muted. I hear you guys.
Oh, okay. Well, so introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah. So my name is D'Angelo, guys. I've known Uncle Rob like all my life, I think. So I just wanted to introduce myself and say it's a pleasure to meet you guys. And it's nice to see a bunch of familiar black faces and melanin on the screen right now, man.
What's up, man? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys.
And next we have
This is Shaquille Watkin.
yeah, either one of you can.
For a long time.
I don't think they can hear you.
Can you hear
us?
Yeah, speak up because
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta speak up a little bit.
I said, my name is Shaquille Watkin. I've known Uncle Rob majority of my life. Great man, inspirational figure. I learned a lot from him, his mentorship, and he's always looked out for me and my family throughout. I honor him like my own father.
Definitely agree to that, man. Hear that, man.
Thank you. And who's that other gentleman,
All right.
Mr.
All right. Hey, my name is Roseayy. I knew Rob since high school. He really helped me out through a lot of rough times. Inspirational figure. He's my uncle. I call him my uncle. He calls him my nephew. Teaches me a lot. And I'm glad to be here today. Glad everyone's here and looking healthy and happy.
Amen to that. Thank you. All right, so glad to have all you guys here. So I'm gonna jump right in. And first of all, again, this is a real crucial time in the music industry for a lot of the stuff that we're gonna talk about today. So the information that I have comes from a blog that was written by Angela Mastrogiacomo. It was a blog that she submitted to Sonicbids in January, actually on the 2nd of January of this year, right? So obviously there's been a lot of things, a lot of events that have taken place since then. So some of these predictions will either be still on point or maybe just a little shifted. So our topic for today, of course, are the 5 music industry trends that we should be aware of in 2020. And here they are. So the first one she has is that there'll be more power shifted towards indie labels. That's number one. Number two is that music and virtual reality will become one. So they'll somehow be merged together. The third one is about tech bundling, which some of you may have not heard of that before, but we'll definitely cover what that is in more detail. And then there'll be a shift in the way we consume music. That's a pretty interesting thing because that's a constant evolvement. And the fifth one will be, there'll be a stronger focus on alternative income. So I'm gonna start jumping right into the first one, excuse me, and then we'll take some questions right at the end of what I state about the first topic, which was the power shift to indie labels. Okay, so the reason why she says this will happen, which I can honestly see, is that there's 2 very important elements that would cause that. One is that artists will have a lot more impact and say on what happens with their careers and their catalog and pertaining to that label, more so than they would with a major label. With a major label, they're more like an employee. With an indie label, they're gonna be more like a partner, which also will lead to the second point, which is that it will also lead to an increase in the amount of percentages that an artist could expect to see. For a major label, you're probably going to get something within a range of 10% to 15% of the suggested listed retail price of anything that you release through that label. With an indie label, because your role is more involved, you would probably see more of an increase, close to 50%, and sometimes more, depending on the role you play in the deal that you make with that label. So there's a label of note, an indie label that you may be aware of. It's called We Did It Records. Right? I don't know if you are familiar with them, but you may be familiar with some of their artists, Tory Lanez, R.L. Grimes. There's a couple of others, and it's a really progressive label. One of the things that they did, which I think is very fascinating, is that they also formed, and I think they started in 2012. They started something a few years ago called Tombstone Records. And what they did is they did a form of marketing where they take some of their singles from some of their artists, they package it together and they give it away. So you can download it. And the whole idea is that by doing that, you'll be introduced to these artists without having to pay for it, which will spark your interest enough to go back and listen to the other pieces of their catalog and maybe make a purchase there. So I'm gonna pause here and just see if anybody has any questions. If you have a question, just kind of stick a finger up and then I will I'll choose. Anybody have any questions? Yep. Okay, I see.
I have a question.
Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Roosevelt.
Okay, so my question is, you know, it seems nice and all. You get a bigger percentage, a bigger cut of the proceeds from what you make, but what is the incentive from the corporations doing this? Is it like, what, they're just trying to be nice to artists, or what do they get out of this? You know what I mean? Because I feel like it sounds too good to be true.
No.
Like, what do they get out of giving us a higher cut?
They get paid too. they get paid, and they also get the privilege of being able to say that you're on their label. You know, so the other thing too that happens is that if they release your product on their label, you're drawing more attention to them too. So that helps to push their brand and build their brand. It also brings in revenue from other sources outside of what you're doing, because you're not the only artist they have there. So they're still going to make money, which allows them sometimes to form partnerships with other people. Yep. So
so basically, if they have a better deal, then more people will side with them.
Yes. The word will get out. Yeah, if the word will get out, you know, I got a better deal over here at ABC indie label than I did at Warner Brothers. I mean, Warner Brothers is cool and they're huge and everybody knows them, but I'm not getting as much money over there as I do over here. The other thing is that it's an indie label, so they may or may not have the same level of exposure as a Warner Brothers, but because they know that, they're going to fight extra hard for you to get you the exposure that they need to get for you.
Got you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions about number one? Anybody? Okay. All right. All right. So then we're going to move back over and we're going to go to number two. All right. So number two was that music and virtual reality will become one. So this is very interesting because a lot of people don't really pay a lot of attention to virtual reality unless they're talking about a video game in most cases. But this is something completely different. And when I was putting this together, I just kind of did my own research just to kind of see what was going on. Fascinating. So what they have, there's a thing now, this format where Universal Music Group, Sony Music Entertainment, Warner Music Group, and even Rock Nation have gotten this thing where they are licensing some of their video footage of actual performances strictly for this virtual reality performance format. So there's a company called Melody VR, and what they do is they take that footage and put it in this setting so that you can actually pay for a ticket, pick your seat. You can either be in the back of the auditorium or in the front row, or you can even in some cases be up on the stage. They have those kinds of settings. They also have more like club settings. They have more intimate settings where it's like special showcase, or maybe it's a VIP performance. It's even more intimate. Maybe it might just be a small group of people there. But the bottom line is that you are in the room. You feel it 360 degrees. You're there, which is a whole different way of experiencing music than most people are accustomed to. Dell Technologies actually started a thing called the Human Machine Partnership, which is developing technology to also get into the game and do these same things. So essentially, especially in light of what we're dealing with now with the social distancing and people not being able to go to the concerts in droves, the days of where I performed and saw a crowd of 120,000 people, I don't think we'll ever see that again. So something like this may suffice, or people will grow to become more comfortable with doing this. And for some people, this will be the only experience they have with live entertainment, because maybe they've never been to a concert before because they were too young before all this happened. So very interesting to see how that plays out. Are there any questions about that? Any comments about that? Anyone? Okay, I see this.
It seems interesting. Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, want me to go? I'm going now.
Yes, you're on, D'Angelo.
I find it actually pretty interesting. However, it's like a bittersweet kind of thing behind it, because I feel like it takes away the actual feel of the crowd and the emphasis on the people. You want to feel people's energy around you. You want to feel that vibe, and you can't walk up to that girl that you see in the virtual reality and you're like, hey, how you doing? It's just you in your house in a confinement by yourself. So I mean, it's a great idea for people who maybe have anxiety or things of that nature, or have problems with the lights and disturbances of loud music, where they can adjust their sound. But I think for the pretty majority of regular people who want to have that party experience, they're definitely not going to give too much about the social distancing, because we're still out. The people who party are still out protesting right now. So yeah. It's just like, hey, I'm good. We good. If it's over, if the government says it's over, and whenever they feel like bringing it back, they can bring it back. That's up to them,
Right.
But I think we should party in person, man.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is that as long as it's safe and they find a way to make it safe for everybody, that would obviously be the best way to do it. So we can go back to the way we were.
Exactly.
Because that's part of the whole.
There's nothing better than that way.
Yeah, that's part of the whole concert experience, is to be able to be in that atmosphere with all those people who have the same energy as you and they like the same music. You're unified with a couple of thousand people or a couple of hundred, depending on the size of the venue, but you're connecting with that artist because you're in the same space as them, right? So, and that's something too, that a lot of people just kind of, I don't know if they overlooked it, but they haven't found a way outside of this virtual reality format so far to come as close to that as possible. Prior to this, it's just been, since the pandemic hit, people were doing like Facebook or Instagram concerts, or they may go on and sing one song or 5 songs or whatever it is. That's probably a little bit more personable because you actually see the artist there, but it's still not the same thing as being in the room with them. So I get your point. Anybody else have something they want to add to that? Nope, we're okay. All right. Thank you for that.
No, Shaq has something.
Oh, okay. I can't. You have to really put your finger up so we can see it, Shaq. Go ahead.
I got you. I got you. So, in terms of like virtual reality and music, do you think that artists somewhat have kind of influenced that direction, like Drake and Travis Scott have in Fortnite? In a way, because through social media platforms, like I feel like a lot of artists have started to go towards that route in terms of like gaming, in terms of just like virtual reality in general.
Well, that's
do you think they have a hearsay as to like?
So if I heard your question correctly, you're asking if artists like Drake and some of the others because of their involvement with video games and such, that was an influence on people moving in this direction with virtual reality? Not really.
Yeah.
Because the video game market is a kind of a separate thing, but it does have something to do with something else that we're going to cover. So that's still a very valid point that you brought up. I think the virtual reality thing comes from the fact that people are losing money. You know, you have like the Live Nations, you know, of the world, these promoters, these live show promoters, they're not making any money right now. So, and of course, if there are no concerts, then the artists are not making any money either, because as soon as this hit, everybody's concerts got shut down globally. You know, people, they held on to their tickets and hoped that maybe this was going to blow over really quick and they'd be able to still go. But that's not what happened, as we can see. But thank you for bringing that point up. But it's a poignant question, and it definitely has something to do with one of the other points coming up.
Well, I have one more thing to add to that. If we
Okay.
can, like one more thing.
And by the way, Dan,
So
by the way, your audio is kind of breaking up on us a little bit.
all right, what about now?
It's better, just a little bit of static, but I can hear you clearer.
All right.
That's
So
right there.
my question, my thing to add to that was, what he said, it basically made a lot of sense, because I'm thinking maybe these artists are tired of maybe the situation with Ariana Grande when, you know, the tragic situation with the bombing. So he's making a good point where maybe it's about their safety as well. And I'm thinking, does it make the world a safer place to do the virtual instead of in person due to the chaos and the loot, you know, the looting and things of that nature? So this actually might be beneficial to the country, actually. So
yeah, but well, definitely from that perspective, that's a whole other thing. You know, just the whole safety aspect of it. You know, people being assaulted, or, you know, unfortunately their lives being taken. And I have been on stage, and I'm on stage looking into the audience, and I can see a fight break out right over to my right, and it's spreading virally, like it's going across to a point where it's going to hit the next person, and then it hits them, and then they hit somebody else, and it's like literally moving through the crowd, and the security has to run through and try to break it up, you know, before it really spreads and becomes an all-out, you know, brawl. I've also seen large crowds where none of that happened, you know, so, but still that element is there. So from a security perspective, that is still something to consider as a factor that would make it more feasible to do the virtual reality too. So I think there's kind of a balance of why this could work and be a good thing, and as well as what we're going to miss. So there's pros and cons, you know, some takeaways, some things that we, you know, that we'll have to give up in order to have that, if we're going to have just that. But that's a good question. Good point. So we're going to move on to the next thing, which was the tech bundling, which was something that a lot of people didn't think about. So how many of you, by show of hands, are familiar with bundling and what that actually is?
Yep. Definitely familiar.
So Rob, you're familiar with it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So for the rest of you who may be a little unfamiliar, bundling is just essentially what it says it is. You're putting some things together and you're selling it or promoting it in one unit, right? So with tech bundling, what she's saying, what Angela is saying in her blog, is that technology companies are starting to expand in that area and match up with other tech companies, and that slowly that's going to move into the music industry a little bit more than it has in the past. So some examples of bundling, and we deal with bundling all the time. You know, they don't call it that outright, but that's what it is. Amazon's doing something right now with Prime bundling, with the Prime bundle. Cable is the biggest form of bundling, right? So you have a cable network and they have a number of different stations, right? Or other, so you have the Stars network, and you have HBO, and they may have like as many as 10 channels in their network. on cable, and you pay a subscription price every month to be able to have access to any of those in packages, right? Because they know everybody's not going to like every single thing, so they find different ways to package it so it's more appealing to you. Back in decades past, when people were buying actual hardcover product of music on a more consistent basis, because it is still selling, just that predominantly most people are buying stuff online. They used to do compilation CDs, right? So Sony Music may have maybe 10 new artists coming out, or maybe they may have 5 new artists coming out, and they want to put out an album that only has those 5 artists, maybe 2 songs a piece, so that you can check it out and you're aware that they have a release coming. Then you can look out for it and perhaps purchase it. It draws interest that way. There are problems with bundling. There are problems, 4 that are very notable. One is that the consumer may not see the value of getting a whole packet. They may not like everything in that packet, you know, so they may only want one of those things. So they may not see the value of doing that or the need to do it. Another one is that they may have problems making the purchase. Sometimes it's so complicated to get it or to make a purchase that they just give up and stop doing it. Another thing is that some components in that bundle may be cheaper just to get it by itself than it costs to get it along with 3 other things that they may not like as much or want as much. And then the other one, the 4th thing, is the fact that they just don't see, oh wait, okay. Oh, there's no incremental profit. So in other words, this money mainly done for promotional purposes. So this isn't something that you're going to sell throughout the year. It may just be for a specific release or a specific event or something like that. So when it costs to package something like that or put it together, it may not play out very well in terms of a profit margin at the end. So any comments or questions about that one, about the bundling?
That makes sense. You explained it pretty well. I think sometimes, you know, depending on what you're selling to, bundling does help kind of push those initial sales. Like, I stuff be released in a bundle, and that would kind of boost the sale rather than just selling a single album. Sometimes it could definitely be a big help, especially when it comes to bigger projects. And, you know, sometimes they'll give you a bundle and that like they're giving you, you know, like a deal, like the higher, but they're giving you a lesser price. So some people will go buy more, thinking that they're, you know, getting a better deal on them buying that than just the single album or song, you know, just in general. Like if you put a song with a music video and then some digital book of pictures or something, you know, I've seen fans like that kind of stuff. Yep.
Yeah, no, that definitely is, that's an interesting aspect to it too. The other thing, I think, if you think about it, the way music is streamed or downloaded and the way you have more of a boutique style of shopping for music now, you know, somebody could put an album out, but you don't have to get the whole album. You can just, I like that song, I'm just going to get that. And I'm going to put it on my playlist with that song over there from that artist because I like that one. You know, so you actually, the better part is that you have control over that bundle because you're creating it yourself. Which I think is more appealing, which is why people don't really have a problem doing that. You know, as opposed to what Angela's talking about in her blog. But good, thank you, Rob. That's an interesting point. Anybody else have anything they want to add to that? Okay, hold on. I see Roosevelt over there. Yes, sir.
My bad. It's good now.
Okay.
Yeah, we good. Right. All right. So, yeah, my thing is on another standpoint of like I feel like this makes it with bundling. I feel like it makes it so artists have to actually be conscious about the content they put out, and they have to actually try and like put out better content. They can't put out like mediocre content, because if they do, then people won't buy that. Where before you had to buy the whole album to listen to the songs you wanted to listen to, But now you can just buy whatever you want to listen to. So if you're making half-ass songs or something that's not as good as you think it should be, people won't buy it. So I think it makes artists have to work actually for the people they're trying to sell what they're trying to sell to. You know what I mean?
Right. That's true. And the minute that they started giving people the option of what they wanted to buy online, that became a thing. And I don't think it was announced, but people saw that right away. You know, it wasn't a thing where it was officially made as a statement, but people saw they weren't selling as much as they used to when people were forced to buy their stuff. Somebody else had a comment? Nope. Okay. But yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you. Thank you for that. Moving on to number 4, the way we consume music. So we already know, we just talked a little bit about, you know, the whole streaming, and people probably aren't downloading as much as they used to. But here's an aspect of consuming music that people just don't pay that much attention to. I'll just say it. Alexa, please play me a song about my girlfriend leaving and moving out today. And then a song will come out, and she'll repeat your statement, you know, and then she'll find this song. There's a gentleman out there right now who has about 20,000 songs on Alexis's format, because if he heard me say that, what I just said, he would go home and write a song about it. And then he would submit it into their playlist, and he gets paid every time Alexa plays that song. All right. So he's got 20,000. He makes tens of thousands of dollars a year from doing that. Isn't that crazy? It's crazy. I stubbed my toe. Ouch. Alexa, please play me a song. Yeah, it is. It is. And I think it's something that goes over most people's heads. We're not even thinking about that, but that's a huge stream of revenue. And in addition to Alexa, we have Siri, we have Google Assistant. There's some other ones out there, but those are probably like the top 3 that most people are familiar with. And I think it's notable that if you have the capacity to do that, then you really should. You know, it's money that people are not going after because they don't think about it. Anybody else have any comments or questions about that? Did I see a hand go up? Anybody? All right. What's that?
I said, oh, what you said was all facts. Yeah, I got no questions on that one.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many other opportunities out there. And I want to encourage everybody to look into them, do some research, think outside of the box, right? Let's move on to number 5, a stronger focus on alternative revenue and income, right? So here's, I'll be very brief. I'll just list the ones that she talked about, right? Touring, which we kind of touched on a little bit, merchandise sales, licensing, which led to the comment that I believe, was it Roosevelt that made that comment? I mean, not Roosevelt, Shaq, the comment about Drake and, you know, music being in video games. That's a form of music licensing, right? And there's so much money involved with that. Getting music into commercials, getting it into television shows, getting it into movies. There are certainly a lot of ways to get that done. There are companies, music licensing companies, that specifically that's their job. They do a deal with you. They take your catalog, whatever you sign over to them to administer on your behalf, and they make sure they expose it to the music supervisors who make those decisions as to what's going to go in. So the other thing too is about the touring and the virtual concerts, or maybe even a release of some kind. When you're going to do a single release or album release, if you kind of center those things around an event as to when you're going to sell things, that sometimes is helpful, right? In terms of drawing attention to it. Any comments or questions about that? Anybody? D'Angelo, did you just raise your hand? No? Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do is, just based on what we just covered, how many of you have heard about 2 or more of those things that we covered out of those 5?
Yep, I definitely have.
Okay. All right.
At least 2 of them. At least 2 of them.
At least 2 of them. Somebody was going to say something.
No, I was just saying, like, yeah, a few of them I didn't know about, but yeah, two of them, like two or three of them I probably knew about.
Okay. Now, in terms of the ones that you haven't heard about them, what do you think about those things?
I think the virtual is definitely a good one that I didn't really know the full in-depth definition and what they were really doing. I just saw like a few video game concerts, and I figured a new thing that was going on, but I didn't know how in depth they were, willing to go with it. Because if you remember, a few years ago, I think 2010, 2011, they had at Coachella they had Tupac,
right,
with reality, and people were losing their minds because they thought Tupac was alive this whole time.
right.
At the end, he just disappeared, and they're like, it wasn't. It looked real. It looked like he was right there rapping with Snoop Dogg, but it wasn't even him. So I figured at some point they would try to take that and make it a whole concert experience. I didn't know they were doing it now, but now I do know. So I definitely see that being a big thing. You can't beat a concert. You can't beat being with people and jumping up and down and having that energy. But like D'Angelo said, sometimes some people can't hear that kind of music over and over, or they can't be able to see it because of epilepsy and other difficulties. And sometimes it's just hard for people to get to concerts. They don't like that social anxiety. So there's definitely a market for that, for sure.
Yep. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then, well, actually, I'm just going to leave the floor open now. Do any of you have any questions that you would like to pose to me at this time? If you do,
I got one for you.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, go ahead. You go first.
Go ahead, Roosevelt. Yes,
yeah.
sir.
All right. So my main question is, in a sense of advertising, like, what would you recommend for like an up and coming artist, and like the best ways to advertise music that you have, so that you can reach out to a broad variety of people, not just like specific groups of people. Like if you want to just get your music out there so a lot of people can listen to it, how would you go about that?
So the key thing, first of all, is you do have to know who your core audience is. Like who is the core audience that will listen to your music? Because if you try to go too spread out, you may not reach anybody, right? And the whole thing about pop, that's short for popular, and things become popular. They don't start off being popular. So you should know who your core audience is, what their habits are, what their consumer habits are. Where do they buy things? Where do they go to hang out? What blogs do they read? Those kinds of things. I think if you hone in on that first, and you have a core audience, those are going to be the people that no matter what happens to you, they will still always follow you and purchase your music or come to your shows or buy your merchandise. Everybody else is what I would call icing on the cake. So it's something that really should grow first. If you try to cover too much at one time, you're gonna miss. It's very rare that anybody does it. Any other questions? Anybody else have a question? Okay.
Robbie, you got something to say, Robbie?
Yeah. I'll get it out the way now. I noticed you had in the article it said 5 things. I think one of the things that they're definitely missing is consistency. Because at this point, there's so much music out there, and there's so many artists kind of doing the same thing. It feels like not only do you kind of have to separate yourself, but you also have to keep your foot on the pedal. Whereas like back in the day, you could drop one album every 3 years, and it would you kind of sit on that. You tour, and it's like, okay, now I'll start something new. But now it's like people are pushing out albums, every 2-3 months. And then they're doing mixtapes, and then they're doing singles and videos. So I definitely think the consistency now in today's music with all genres. So how do you think that applies to kind of the 5 things that we talked about, and how important it is to kind of keep your foot on the pedal and not really let up, because I can see that definitely being hard, for some artists to kind of just keep putting out bangers on bangers on bangers on bangers, especially when you're dealing with like top 10 Billboard type of music. It seems like people are always looking for the next big thing. It's kind of hard to stay relevant.
Well, I think that's a good question. Thank you for asking it. So the key thing is that it really comes down to time management,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, in terms of managing your time, because in order to create music, you have to be in the studio to recreate it. If you're in the studio all the time, just cranking out songs, you're not out promoting it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just cranking out songs just to put out and you're not promoting it, they're not going to sell. So you have
Yeah.
to have some sort of balance of how you're going to do that and manage that and still stay, you know, as consistent as possible without driving yourself, you know, crazy and losing an enormous amount of sleep.
Yeah.
So I think that is the core of that, is that you have to really kind of be mindful of how you're going to map your time out to be able to do those things efficiently and effectively. Because the other thing too is you don't want to sacrifice quality for quantity. You don't want to just keep throwing out songs just to throw out songs. You want to make sure that they're at the level that they should be.
Mm-hmm.
I just went to the studio yesterday, and one of the things that engineer said to me, or we were talking about, was the fact that a lot of the care that people used to take into doing mixes and mastering, some people aren't as much because people aren't listening through systems anymore like they used to.
Yeah.
The earbuds and, you know, whatever is on their phone, you know, for the
Yeah.
most part, the majority of most people now. So they're little tiny speakers. So
Yeah.
people aren't going too crazy about that, but you still want to make sure that whatever you're creating is good, you know, or it's the best possible presentation that you can. And I think if you start with that, then it's very easy to transition to any of the other 5 things that we talked about, you know, because it starts with that. Even having a music video, you know, if the song is not good, then, you know, you can do computer generated graphics and everything else you want, you know,
Yeah.
visually, but if the song is just okay, then it's not going to really matter. But yeah, I think it starts with getting back to your initial question. I think it has more to do with the time management. We're running out of time. I have time for one more question. Anybody else have a question?
I got one last question. It's pretty quick. For someone who you said you just left the studio and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually about to be on my way there right now to one. Never met this engineer, and I'm starting over because it's been a minute since I've been back to the studio due to shiesty dealings with engineers, producers, getting time in studios. They want to charge you, you know, 120 an hour, 70 an hour when the
Welcome to
quality
the
isn't that
music
great.
industry.
Yeah, that's the thing, and it's really discouraging because I know for a fact, and I don't need anyone to tell me. I've played my music for, you know, over a few people already, and just in myself, I believe in myself, so I know that this music is amazing. And as soon as it's heard, it doesn't take much for it to start to get that flow, that traction behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems like I hit that door once I walk, because I'm in New York now, and once I walk in those buildings, these studios and these record labels, they're just quick to turn you away. Like it could be the best song in the world, and they don't care because you're not signed to a label, so they don't have permission to hear it. So it's like we're kind of blocked off. And the only way to get into an industry, only way to get into the music or get this kind of this traction going is to get signed by a label and get these 360 deals. It's not anything to really do about it unless you have the funds.
Or you start your own label, right? And I know I'm saying it as though, you know, you can walk across the street and buy a piece of gum, right?
Right.
But I love
Hey.
label, but essentially what it is that you can either grab an opportunity, or you can take advantage of an opportunity, or you can create your own opportunity, right? And if you create your own opportunity, it may take longer. The process may be a little harder, but the end result is that you don't have to deal with that. You don't have to deal with somebody else making a decision or determination about what it is that you're putting out. And a lot of people are not really thinking about what it really takes to start a label. It doesn't take as much as you think. I mean, it's work, but it's not as difficult as most people would think it is, especially in these times. It's so easy to release music why not release it under your own label, under your own imprint, you know? And sometimes just doing that, now people are not dealing with you as an artist, they're dealing with you as a business. And that's a little different, it's a little different perspective. So that's something to consider. I wish we could go longer. I wish we had an hour, but we don't. But I just want to thank all of you for coming and participating. If you're interested, I'll let you know about the next one, and we'll take it from there.
Sure.
All right.
All right. So thank you, D'Angelo. Thank you, Robbie Robinson. Thank you, Roseayy and Shaq. Thank you for joining us on the Industry 101 Masterclass. I'm your host.
Definitely.
And we'll see you again soon.
All right,
Rob. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure, guys. Definitely.
Very informative. Loved it.